Good morning, and I want to wish a very happy Mother's Day to all the grandmothers, mothers, stepmothers, adoptive mothers, and even honorary mothers that are watching this. This is your day. We're remembering our mothers, and so it's a special day. And so this morning, my lesson is entitled The World's Toughest Job. And you can guess what that is. It's the mother's job, because a stay-at-home mom, wears many hats. And then you add in, oftentimes in our day and age, when a mother works outside of the home, not only is she going out and has a job, sometimes a full-time job, but then also a full-time job as a mother. And so some statistics from salary.com from 2021. And so this is fairly recent. A mother's average work week is 106 hours long. That's actually up about 10 hours from 10 years ago. So it's not getting any slower. And to be honest, the pandemic didn't help. A mother's duty include all of these jobs: a chauffeur, family counselor, cleaning woman, cook and dietitian, bookkeeper, gardener, maintenance worker, housekeeper, errand runner, interior decorator, teacher, and that's especially so now that we have e-learning and a lot of home stuff, and then along with that, technical support, because the kids are using these electronic devices and they often need help, and so it's up to mom to help with that very often. And so the annual worth, according to salary.com, the annual worth of a mother's workload is equivalent, if they would have the same jobs, the same hours, the same pay if they were out in the workforce, it would be $184,820. But to be honest, the value of mother's love and sacrifice is priceless. And so it's the toughest job you'll ever love. So I want to say thank you to my mother. She is gone. She's with the Lord now. But I was truly blessed to have her, Jenny Leigh Warne, as my mother, who raised me and gave me the values that I have, taught me about the Lord, and sacrificed so much for me over her life. And so in Matthew, we're actually going to look at 4 different mothers in the Bible to see this world's toughest job. The first one's found in Matthew 15, verses 21 through 27. Matthew 15, verses 21 through 27. Here it starts out. Leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. So this is north of Israel, north of what would be Galilee, in the region of the Phoenicians. So there a Canaanite woman from the vicinity came to him, crying out, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is suffering terribly from demon possession." Jesus did not answer a word. So his disciples came to him and urged him, "Send her away, for she keeps crying out after us." He answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel." The woman came and knelt before him. "Lord, help me," she said. He replied, "It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to their dogs." "Yes, Lord," she said, "but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fell from the master's table." So here we have this woman. We're not told her name, but she's the mother of a possessed girl. A mother of a possessed girl. And so she comes. Jesus is in the area, And like so many who have family that are hurting, her daughter, she says, is suffering terribly. Let's look at that again. Verse 22. Verse 22. Matthew chapter 15, verse 22. It says, a Gentile woman who lived there came to Jesus, pleading, have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David, for my daughter is possessed by a demon that torments her severely. Torments her severely. She's suffering greatly. So she cares for her daughter. She cares for her child. And so she's pleading with Jesus. But notice what Jesus, he doesn't say a word. He ignores her. But that doesn't stop the woman. Notice, she was willing to cross barriers. First of all, she's a Gentile. And Jesus is a Jew. And that doesn't stop her. She knows the barrier. She knows that the Jews don't associate with Gentiles. But she doesn't care because she cares about her daughter. She was persistent. Even when Jesus ignores her, she continues on to the point that his disciples say, send her away, she's bothering us. And besides that, when Jesus finally speaks to her and he says, I've only come to the lost sheep of Israel, and he says to her, it wouldn't be right, and this seems a little calloused of Jesus, but I think it's said with a smile. I think it's said tongue-in-cheek. He says, would it be right to feed the children's food to the puppies under the table? That's basically what he was saying. And she said, well, even the puppies under the table are able to eat the crumbs that fall from the table. And so she claimed no right. She didn't say, I'm one of the children, I deserve this. She just says, going along with Jesus and his illustration, she says, I'm willing to take whatever crumbs fall from the table for my daughter. And so, verse 28, Matthew 15, verse 28, listen to what Jesus says. Dear woman, Jesus said to her, your faith is great. Your request is granted. And her daughter was instantly healed. This woman cared so much about her daughter that she was willing to cross these barriers, whatever barrier it happened to be. She was persistent and she didn't claim any rights. But in the end, the result was she was able to find healing for her daughter. And that was the most important thing to her. And so, caring for your children is tough, isn't it, mothers? When you've got that child that's sick, that child that's hurting, that child that doesn't understand what's going on, whether it's some friend that has betrayed them or they've fallen and skinned their knee, a mother's love, her care, is what they need. And that caring can be tough. Our next story is found in the book of Exodus, chapter 1, starting in verse 22 through chapter 2, verse 2. Exodus 1, 22 through chapter 2, verse 2. And here we have the story of a woman named Jochebed. Starting in, so this is when the Hebrews are slaves in Egypt. And they've been growing in number. Pharaoh is getting concerned about their growth. And so he comes up with a plan. So it's in verse 22 of chapter 1, then Pharaoh gave this order to all his people. Every boy that is born you must throw into the Nile, but let every girl live. So every Hebrew boy, you're to throw into the river. You're to drown, basically. Now a man of the house of Levi married a Levite woman, And she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. And so here we have the mother of Moses. This is Jochebed, is her name. And so she is at a time where a decree has been made. If there's a male child that's born to the Hebrews, the midwives are to drown them. And so what she does is she saves her son and hides him for 3 months. Picking up in verse 3, Exodus chapter 2 and verse 3. When Jochebed couldn't hide Moses any longer, she took a basket made of papyrus plants and coated it with tar and pitch. She put the baby in it and set it among the papyrus plants near the bank of the Nile River. So, in a way, she does keep the king's decree. She puts her baby into the river, but she does it by protecting him in a basket. She makes a basket. She coats the basket with tar and pitch to make it so it's water resistant and it'll float. And she sets the baby among the reeds on the banks of the river. Now, we know that the story, she leaves her older daughter, Miriam, to watch to make sure the baby's okay. And it's very likely that she put the baby where she did because she knew that this is where Pharaoh's daughter would regularly come and bathe by the river with the hopes that she would find this baby and take care of it. Or possibly she was just placing this baby in the care of God and his protection. And so she's trusting that God will care for her baby boy. So she puts him in the river and trusts God to make sure that this baby is taken care of. And God does provide, and Pharaoh's daughter finds this baby. And then Miriam, the sister, comes and says, do you want us to find, this baby that's been thrown into a river, you want to keep him. Do you want me to find a nurse for him until he's older? And so the princess of Egypt, the king's daughter, Pharaoh's daughter, says yes. And so Moses' own mother is able to nurse and care for him until he's old enough to live in the home of the king. And so the way that Jochebed protected her son in this very difficult time when he was supposed to have died. See, because protecting your children is tough. And whatever we do, we need to be like Jochebed and put that baby in the hands of God and trust that. Because, listen, no matter what goes on, the stories, the things that happen in our mind, the things that we imagine can happen, whether it's, sickness, SIDS, school shooting, the children are older, and maybe it's they're driving, car accident, whatever it is, we never stop worrying about our children. And that's when we need to put them in this basket of prayer and place them out before God and say, God, you love them and care for them more than I do. And so I'm trusting them in your hands. And that's what Jochebed did. Our third story is found in, we're going to start in Proverbs. It's the passage that you probably heard about, training our children. It's Proverbs 22 and verse 6. It says, train a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not turn from it. Along with that, we're going to read a passage in 2 Timothy, Paul writing to a young man, or a young preacher by the name of Timothy. 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 14 and 15. 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 14 and 15. However, Paul writes, continue, he's writing this to Timothy, continue in what you have learned and found to be true, You know who your teachers were. From infancy, you have known the Holy Scriptures. They have the power to give you wisdom so that you will be saved through faith in Christ Jesus. Paul reminds me, says, you've learned this. You've learned these things. Remember who you learned them from, and you've known them from infancy. So let's guess. Who is this talking about? This is talking about the mother of Timothy. In Acts, we discover that Timothy's father was a Gentile, a Greek, would not have taught Timothy the law, did not have Timothy circumcised according to the Jewish law. So where did he learn the Holy Scriptures? Well, 2 Timothy 1 and verse 5, not just his mother. Let's learn. Let's see. I remember your true faith. The faith first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice. And I know you now have that same faith. Timothy learned the Scriptures. Timothy learned what he learned was trained by his mother Eunice and his grandmother Lois. And so, you know what? It's so important, as Proverbs tells us, to train up our children. And Lois and Eunice took that seriously. And that's a lesson to not only our mothers, but in our congregation, which is older, our grandmothers. You have a responsibility. Notice, it wasn't just Timothy's mother. You grandmothers have a lot of opportunity as well as responsibility to help train your grandchildren. So there's a lot of power in that. So it's tough, but you need to do it. Training your children and grandchildren is tough. And that brings us to our final example. It's found in 1 Samuel chapter 1 and verse 11. This is the story, if you remember, it's the story of Samuel. And so we start in chapter 1, verse 11. Then Hannah made a vow, O God of the angel armies, if you'll take a good hard look at my pain. And here her pain, in this we see in context, she's unable to have children. She's barren. The Lord, it's in this passage, it says the Lord has closed her womb. Says, if you'll quit neglecting me, again, she's praying to God, and go into action for me by giving me a son, I'll give him completely, unreservedly to you. I'll set him apart for a life of holy discipline. And so Hannah, who is childless and is hurting because of that, and she prays to God and she says, Lord, please, please give me a child. But he says, I'll make a promise. If you give me a son, I'll give him back to you, to serve you, to be dedicated to you, to live for you. Listen to what happens. 1 Samuel 1, 27 and 28. Samuel was born, or he was conceived, he's born, he's grown up, he's old enough now that he can go into the service of the Lord. And this is what Hannah says. 1 Samuel 1:27, I prayed for this child, and the Lord granted my request. In return, I am giving him to the Lord. He will be dedicated to the Lord for his whole life. Listen, was that easy for Hannah to do? I'm sure it wasn't. She longed for this child. She longed to have this child and then to give him up to the Lord, to go to serve in the tabernacle, to become a priest and to serve in God's tabernacle. It was not easy for Hannah to let go of this child. Letting go of your children is tough. But I want you to think of that. It's not just letting them go when they're small. It's not easy letting them go when they graduate high school, or they graduate college, or they get married, or they move across the country. We're constantly letting go. But remember, let them go to the Lord. That's where we are praying that they are dedicated to the Lord. So, as we wrap it up, how many of our own mothers that are listening to this today prayed that we would be dedicated to the Lord all our lives? Let me ask you, are her prayers being answered? Are your mother's prayers being answered? Are you dedicated to the Lord like Samuel was all his life? That's the opportunity each of us have. I hope your mother did train you to love the Lord. I hope your mother offered you care and protection and training and was able to let you go to the Lord. But I hope that you are dedicated to the Lord and you've got that opportunity. If you haven't given your life to the Lord, if you haven't obeyed the gospel, what are you waiting for? If you have any questions and you want to know, what do I need to do to dedicate myself to the Lord? What do I need to do to follow Jesus? Contact us. Better yet, listen next week. We'll talk about what it means to truly follow Jesus. So have a blessed week. And remember to say thank you to your mom, or if she's already gone, to offer a prayer of thanks to God that you had such a wonderful mom. God bless and have a wonderful and blessed week.